I wanted the entire video to be no more than 10 minutes. Looks like I'm going to have to do two videos, and I hope it doesn't go into three. Because what I have to say is really very simple. Boys emulate the behavior of the males that are around them. Boys need to have an example of what a man so they can know what a man is. The only thing that a woman can do is talk about what a man is. She cannot be a man. And boys don't learn manhood because a woman or a male or anybody else talks about men are this way, men are that way. You can talk about it all you want, but you have to be it. You have to be it for it to really set in, because one of the reasons also that I brought up the sagging thing is because obviously this is males copying other males. Years ago, nobody did that. It didn't exist. It is common now. Some people would even say it has reached the point of being trendy among a underclass, not among people that have self-respect. It never will be. But the main thing is this is males copying other males, copying their behavior, copying their look, copying what they think is their swag, that type of thing. And the reason I show these types of examples is because it is ingrained within a boy's psyche to emulate the behavior of males that they look up to. It is ingrained within them. You are telling on yourself. Either your father is, there's something, either your father was absent, or your father was not somebody that was worthy of being looked up to, or you have no idea who he is. I could not imagine emulating something like that my dad would have been so vehemently opposed to. Why would I respect other males walking around with their ass hanging out more so than I do the man, the real man who actually raised me? That doesn't make any sense. If you have a dad who is respectable and you respect him and look up to him and you see him as a man, you would want to be like him. Maybe not every aspect of his character, but at least you'd want to copy or emulate the positive aspects of his character. My son, in so many ways, my oldest son, when he was, well, there is a reason I keep saying my son is more so than my sons, because I have two other sons that basically I inherited through my marriage with my present wife. And they are very much my sons, but I'm referring to my oldest son that I raised from birth. I was into, and still am, martial arts, jiu-jitsu, that type of thing. I actually trained with the Gracies in Torrance, California. And he would put on my gi, which was way too big for him, put the little belt around his waist, and try to do little karate moves and kicks and things like that when he was very small, because that's what his dad was doing. He also watched me train a lot. So he would try to mimic my motions. So, as any good dad would do, I started actually training him. I trained him extensively for years. I became his mentor in that. Plus, I put him in a number of other martial arts classes where he could train under different disciplines. Jiu-jitsu and kung fu, bit of karate, trained with the BKF, Black Karate Federation in Los Angeles. Pretty popular, well known. But in so many of the things that I did, he tried to emulate. He would take my shoes and walk around. He did like girls do with their moms. My oldest son, when it was just him and I, that's what he would do. While I'm on my computer writing my books or doing whatever I'm doing, I was always busy. But he would play dress up and try to put on my shoes, my clothes, and, hey, Dad, what do you think? He'd try to make little superhero outfits. He would sit there with scissors and, hey, Dad, you have some scissors? Hey, Dad, you have some glue? I didn't know what he was doing, but I would show him where the stuff was that he wanted. And he would invent some superhero costume and just pose for me. And I would give him that undivided attention for a few minutes. And then he would take it off and go create another costume. That was that father-son time. And I'm telling you that it is so important in a boy's life. Boys try to emulate their dads. And if they have a good dad, that is a good thing. It's only bad when their dad is a thug, is a criminal, is a loser, is a deadbeat, is not doing what they're supposed to do. Boys who were raised properly will become good men who will teach their kids to be the same, who raise their kids in the same way that they were raised. In this image here, it says, it's not the flesh and blood, but the heart that makes us father and son. There are so many examples of boys trying, consciously and subconsciously, to be like their dads. The best time to begin preparing a boy for adolescence is now, before adolescence even begins. So many examples of boys trying to be like their dads. And men are supposed to set the tone on how men are supposed to be. And let me tell you something. If you don't get anything else out of this video, because I know I'm rambling a little bit, if you don't get anything else out of it, get this, because this is a fact. Boys will never, ever hang upside down on a freeway overpass as somebody is grabbing them by the ankles or whatever it is they have to do to tag a wall with their graffiti in order to impress other boys that they consider as their peers. They would never join gangs and gangbang and do things they don't really want to do to impress peers. They would never try or experiment with drugs, any drugs at all, whether it's cocaine, marijuana, drinking, or anything else to impress their peers. If the ultimate man who they want to impress, the ultimate male who they want to impress is their dad, and their dad has set a standard that overrides anything that these other loser kids could possibly do. They have the approval of the most important man in their life, which is their father. So you and 9 homeboys or anybody else are not going to intimidate them into doing something just so that they can win your approval, because your approval does not matter to them. They see you for what you are. A boy who is raised properly will see you for what you are. You are not a man. You are not a real man. You're nobody that they would look up to. They go home and they see how a real man walks, talks, acts, thinks, looks, dresses, and everything else, and that is more important to them. They will choose their peers in the same way that their dad would, because they do not value the opinion of people that they truly should see as beneath them. You're the guys who are the dropouts. You're the ones who get the bad grades in school. You're the ones who don't go to school. You're the ones who have a criminal record. You're the ones who have a juvenile record. You're the ones who are thugs. You're the ones who walk around with your asses hanging out. You're the ones who are getting drunk and high and thinking that impresses someone because you're so insecure. Why would they be impressed with that unless they looked up to it? They don't look up to it. And if you raise your kids correctly, you raise your boys correctly, your boys will not look up to it, and your girls will not be impressed with it. They will see it for what it is. And how can they if you won't do your job as a father, as a man? That should have been generational fatherhood, creates a legacy. It creates a legacy. I raised my children the way that I was raised. They raised their children in the way that they were raised, and that will continue on and on and on. And if it's positive and it's working, that's the way it should be. By the same token, there's generational failure in too many families. There is a generational failure, a generational curse, as it were, where people are producing children that are very much like them. And the bad thing about it is that it is a legacy of failure that they're passing down, a family tradition of failure. This is why we have entire families where maybe there might be one person who even finished high school. Here in 2018, we still have people saying, I'm the first one in my family to ever go to college. Well, that's a shame. Because when you talk about your family, you're talking about your brothers and sisters, your mothers, your fathers, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, and everybody that has your DNA, your direct lineage. Nobody goes to college. Very few graduate high school. And there are very few, if any, that do not have a criminal record. In many families, there are few, if any, who are not drug addicts or alcoholics. That is the family norm, to be a drug addict or an alcoholic. The family norm in many families, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, cousins, nephews, nieces, everybody is in some way gang affiliated. Now, you know this is true. If it applies to you, fine. If the shoe fits, wear it. But if it doesn't apply to you, I'm not talking about you. But you know as well as I do that in many families, this is the pattern. This is the tradition. That's a generational curse that needs to be broken, and it will never be broken if people ignore it. You start blaming any and everything else for the fact that there is a legacy of failure within the family. There's not a legacy of positiveness. There's a legacy of failure. A legacy of failure. A legacy of boys who have no idea what a man is, how to be a man, how to act like a man, and that's why so many of them they